Hello, everybody. This is Evan Grant from the Dallas Morning News and dallasnews.com. It's a different voice than usual because Kevin is usually introducing the show, but Kevin is, let's just say, indisposed. I would otherwise mention where he might be, but I don't want to make anybody jealous of Kevin's very lavish lifestyle. So we are here for the SportsDay Insider this week, and I'm going to be controlling the airwaves, which is what I've always wanted, more power. We're going to talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys, and I don't know if there's anything going on there. And we'll talk a little bit about the Rangers and the trade deadline and maybe a big win over the Yankees and what that might propel this team to. And since Kevin's here, not going to be here, we're going to have two guests from SportsDay joining us. Now on our line is Calvin Watkins, the Cowboys beat reporter, and a little bit later, Shawn McFarland, my partner on the Rangers, is going to join us. But Calvin, how are things in California?
Things are going pretty good. Things are good. Cool
How's
weather.
the weather? You know, we always used to get a weather report from David out there to start this off.
Oh, yeah. Well, the temperatures in the 60s in the evening, high 70s, low 80s during the day. Just, shorts and pullover weather. I went to
it sounds like it's good stogie weather for you at the end of the day.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I haven't had one the last 2 days, but I went to the beach, and so the water is cold. I saw some kids running around out there, some friends of mine out there, just having a good old time. Great times out here in Oxnard and Ventura.
Sounds so much different than Surprise for Rangers camp, I got to tell you.
Maybe what you should do is, was it Ray Davis? That's the owner of the Rangers? He's the owner of the Rangers, right? Ray Davis?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. He didn't say anything. Ask him, put a diamond out here where the Cowboys play. They can play some baseball out here. Beautiful weather.
That would make some of the spring training road trips a little bit exorbitant, probably. But listen, I might put up with that.
They got planes. They can fly.
If they spent the first 10 days out there in Oxnard, I'd be happy.
That's pitchers and catchers, right? That's they can just get
do that and then come back to Surprise and start playing games.
Yeah.
All right, Calvin. So what's going on the Cowboys? I hear some talk that there might be a little bit of, shall we say, miscommunication, maybe, or maybe it's full-scale crisis. What's going on with the Micah Parsons situation?
Well, Mr. Parsons has requested a trade because he is frustrated with the lack of progress in his contract talks with the Cowboys. Jerry Jones is kind of dismissive of the trade demands, calling it a negotiating ploy. Parsons has not spoken to the media. From my understanding, he's going to be in Malibu at some point this week, running on the sand dunes, stay in shape. But Jerry is taking a very casual, relaxed approach in this. He's confident that they will get a deal done at some point. He defends you and I think Kevin have talked about in this space about why did it take the Cowboys so long to get a contract done with their star players. And Jerry will always say it's more complicated when it comes to star players. Obviously, when you sign someone, you got to have that money in escrow, right? So that money's earning interest. So the longer it takes, the more interest it earns. That's one theory. And then Jerry is just stubborn, right? It's hard for him to, give someone $200 million, right? But even though he's got it, it's just hard for him to do that. So he makes you wait, while the rest of the world is waiting for you to get this thing going. And it puts a lot of stress and pressure on the other players and coaches because they have to answer questions about a guy who wants to be here, but now doesn't want to be here, but eventually will be here because Jerry's going to give him $200 million and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, it all comes out in a big, gooey, sticky mess. Listen, let's go back to a couple of things. Number one, why did we get here? Why are we here with this? Mm-hmm. Do you think?
I think we're here because Jerry and Micah talked in March, and Micah, it's like he said, she said, right? Or he said, which is what I think our headline was in Sunday's paper. He said. So in March, Jerry talks to Micah. Micah's thinking, oh, we're going to talk about me being a better leader, all those kinds of things. And then Jerry talks about his contract. Jerry thinks that they have a deal. Micah says to Jerry, hey, call my agent, David Muguleta, and get the ball rolling. Jerry's like, I don't talk to agents. I didn't talk to Todd France, who is Dak Prescott's agent, and I gave him the largest contract for a quarterback in history of the league. So why would I talk to Muguleta now? However, Jerry can authorize his lead negotiators to call Muguleta and say, let's get the ball rolling. So that's where we are right now. Now, one more thing to add is that Jerry said that Micah has pulled the offer off the table. So if you pull the offer off the table, in Micah's mind, there's really no offer because it was a verbal conversation that they had.
There seems to be a fundamental issue here. One, Jerry says it's more complicated than it's ever reported, which it doesn't seem like it's as complicated with other teams and their star players. Two, I every time we talk about Jerry in his role that has anything to do with the construction of a football team, it's like he doesn't grasp basic concepts. I cannot understand how Jerry Jones could think that he has a deal in place with his star player that does not involve having a conversation with the agent. This is just now how business gets done. It's not how Jerry does business in terms of all the contracts that he's going to negotiate on the other side. There is an intermediary, and I get stuck on this because I cannot fathom how somebody who is running a pro sports franchise doesn't get these basic concepts. What is your feel on why Jerry refuses to do this when it's the customary and usual practice in every professional sport?
Jerry traditionally has spoken to players in the past, most recently Zach Martin, in order for those deals to get finalized. Now, when Zach Martin, who was the potential Hall of Fame guard, All-Pro guard, was holding out for more money, Jerry called him and said, hey, what do we need to do? And Zach talked to him, and then they got the agent involved, and the deal was done. So Jerry's like, hey, I've called players in the past. He's called DeMarcus Lawrence. He's called Dak Prescott. That's what he does. However, Jerry did it was interesting you said that about his outside businesses. A couple of weeks ago, Jerry said, I don't talk to the lawyers some of the times when it comes to my business dealings away from the Cowboys. So, and while that might be true, he might call Evan Grant and say, we got to make this land deal. And you'll say, well, how much do you want? Okay, that's cool. Ultimately, you're right. It takes a lawyer, or in this case, an agent, to contact the Cowboys chief negotiator to close the deal, because that's business. Now, Jerry could have pushed everybody together, but ultimately you do need a lawyer or an agent or a contract negotiator to close the deal. Now, I'm sure it's this way in baseball and probably basketball as well, you have to be a certified agent to negotiate a contract. Lamar Jackson is probably the only one of the few players in the NFL that does not have an agent. He represents himself. His mom also is a certified agent. She got certified, excuse me. She got certified. So, but the Ravens deal with Lamar Jackson directly only because he represents himself. In this case, Micah does not represent himself. David Muguleta does. So it's part of this whole thing, because is Jerry is the great promoter, and we're talking about it because ultimately this thing could be done.
100%. And again, if it's great if Zach Martin wants to do the deal with Jerry and then direct his agent, sign this, that's one thing. But if a player hires an advocate as his agent to negotiate the contract and says, I want my agent to negotiate with you, that is how business is done. And I just think I cannot fathom how you can cover this team and he says these things, and it's just like it doesn't compute, because this is not how business is constructed. And so then you start to wonder, why hasn't this team won in 30 years? And it gets back to, this is just not how you do business.
No, it's not how you do business. But see, here's the funny thing: whenever they get this done, right, the Cowboys are going to have the highest paid quarterback in the game, the highest paid pass rusher in the game. They're going to have wide receivers probably in the top 5 in salary in CeeDee Lamb. Trayvon Diggs is probably in the top 10 in salary at cornerback, right? And guess what? They also have the highest paid special teams player in the game in Kevontae Turpin. Next year, now they could do it now, but they're not. Tyler Smith, who's been fantastic at guard, another all-pro player, he's going to get paid. He's probably going to become the highest paid guard in the NFL. Then they have a kicker, Brandon Aubrey from Plano. He switched agents. Evan, he's got Dak Prescott's agent. So you know what he's looking for. He's going to become the highest paid kicker in the history of the game as well. So you're going to have all these. So Jerry does all this posturing, and yet ultimately everybody gets their money.
What do you think is the sticking point in the actual negotiation process? Besides the fact that the actual agent has not spoken to Jerry, is there a contention in this negotiation that still needs to be worked out, do you think?
I don't think there's a contention because they haven't really talked, right? However, I would say the number of years is the issue. Micah's people would say, we want a 4-year deal, and Jerry and his boys are like, we want a 5-year deal because you can spread the money out a little longer. Initially, the agent was thinking about a 3-year deal, and when they told me that, I gave that person a look like, really? I don't think they're going to give you $200 million over 3 years. I don't know if they do that in baseball, but, hey, that's your journey, right? So now we're to 4 years, which is right. What Dak Prescott got in back-to-back contracts extension. So I think the years is the issue, but they haven't really talked to have an issue. All they have is a verbal agreement, right? And so
they don't have a verbal agreement because the agent wasn't involved. I mean, for me, and my understanding of all this is like they had a conversation, and Micah told Jerry kind of sort of what he's looking for, but he said, I want to leave the details to my agent. So they don't have a verbal agreement. They've got some parameters, but you know what the difference between parameters and an agreement is. And we're beating a dead horse here. I'm sorry. When does it's like, I'm curious, like what you guys talk about amongst yourselves in like having to try and decipher all of this, because it just seems so contrary to the way business is done.
It is. It's the NFL is this weird dynamic where you have a salary cap, right? So everyone has to spend the same, right? The minimum. But you have these dynamics within the salary cap where, well, there's only so much money we can give you, right? Because you have a salary cap. Okay. Yep. Well, I want this, right? And the team says, well, so I understand where players don't want salary caps, right? But sometimes the salary caps save the owners from themselves, but it also leads to issues
Why do you think baseball wants a salary cap, Calvin? That's Rob Manfred can walk into every clubhouse in the league and talk about why they need a salary cap. But the bottom line is it needs to start with, well, we want to try and save the owners from themselves. So yeah, I get that point. Let me ask you this, Calvin. Do you think, A, there's any possibility that the Cowboys end up actually trading Micah Parsons?
No, I don't think so. I'd be shocked. But then again, there was a basketball player in town that got traded to the Lakers, so nothing should surprise me.
Yeah, but Mike is not out of shape.
No, he's not out of shape. I would say no, they were not going to trade Parsons. It would take a lot. You never say never, right? Because I saw Alex Rodriguez get traded. Right. I've seen Luka Doncic get traded, right? So if you had to trade Micah Parsons, you got to give me 3 first-round picks, or maybe 2 first-round picks and a premium player, right? And a second-round pick. Khalil Mack was a little bit older than Parsons, and he got traded away from the Raiders to the Bears, and that took 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. So, but I don't see the Cowboys doing it. It was funny, but the day after Micah made the trade request, he showed up to practice. He had a hoodie on. Every other time, he's had a jersey. He had a hoodie on and didn't engage with the defensive players, sat on the side, caught footballs, talked to the offensive players. And then that was Saturday. Sunday, we had an off day. Monday, he showed up wearing a jersey. And he kind of interacted a little bit with the defensive players and, hasn't talked to us since the trade demand. But,
Sure.
I think he's, I'll say this before we go to the next thing. And you tell me if I'm wrong. If you're going to make a trade request, right, Evan, trade me. I'm not showing up to practice the next day. I'm taking my behind back to PA and holler at me when you trade me to Jacksonville, or Atlanta or wherever you're going to trade me. Don't show up the next day. And that's why Jerry's like, watch I take you seriously. You're in my building the day after you made trade requests. Come on, man. So a lot of this is posturing and theater. One of my colleagues said, Micah likes the circus just as much as Jerry.
Yeah.
So this is where we are.
So, all right. So there's no real possibility that they trade Micah.
I don't think so. No, sir.
When does the deal get done? Oh, wait, before we go into that, I want to step back for 1 second. The fact that Micah has had all of this public support from current and former teammates, what do you think that says about what's the significance of that for you?
I think all NFL players support each other when they want to get paid because they know this is a brutal sport. The average lifespan of an NFL player is 4 years, 4.5 years. And then once they retire, their life expectancy is you might pass away in your 60s.
Sure, but you don't see the kind of public sentiment like
there's a lot of public. There's like 3 players changed their avatars on social media to support Micah. Dak said that Micah deserves to get paid. CeeDee Lamb said the same thing. Everybody on this team is in support of Micah Parsons wanting to get paid. And it's funny, CeeDee Lamb said, I would not want to play this media game with Jerry. That's just one of the things he regrets is playing that war of words with Jerry because you're not going to win because Jerry's always going to make himself accessible to the media. Now, you can too as a player. However, Jerry knows how to play us better than the players know how to play us in a sense. So,
God, I hate this so much. You should get hazard pay for this. All right, so let's cut to the chase here then. I mean, are we going to be getting ready for kickoff on opening night when Micah gets this deal done, or when do you think this deal gets done?
We break camp August 14th, I think, here, and it won't get done. It will probably get done late August 28th, 29th, something like that. Remember, so Dak Prescott got his deal done the morning of the season opener.
Like that morning. What I'm saying.
Yeah. He was in a hotel and his agent said, hey, we got a deal. He was like, really? He said, yeah, so you can be happy now,
So, I mean, the whole idea is that Jerry will get all of August of airtime on every network talking about the Micah contract.
All the shows you don't like.
As opposed to whether or not this team is any good whatsoever, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So give me a date, Calvin. Give me a date. I want you to, I'm putting you on the spot for a date.
I'm going to say August 29th.
August 29th. All right.
It's
on the calendar.
On the calendar. That's when I get it.
All right, let's move on to something else that resembles football. Cowboys open the exhibition season on Saturday with the Rams. Again, you guys don't have to go very far. That game is where? In L.A.?
In Los Angeles, in Inglewood.
Look at that, at SoFi. What are you looking for? There are two parts here. What are things that you're looking for in the first preseason game?
I'm looking to see, number one, how Brian, and this is the new thing, Brian Schottenheimer, who's his first year head coach, how he operates. He's always been an offensive coordinator, always been a play caller. Now we want to see how you're going to manage the game, how you're going to get your guys going. So that's the biggest thing I want to see out of him. Whether they win or lose is insignificant. I want to see, do you challenge plays? Are you going to be aggressive? How are you going to rotate these backups. That's the biggest thing for me with him.
Is there anything else that you're looking for? I mean, obviously, Brian Schottenheimer is the story of camp, quite frankly.
Right.
I mean, that's what it should be, is
Mhm.
how does the new coach handle this team? It shouldn't be this stupid contract thing. But is there anything else that you're looking for in terms of execution or scheme on the field?
There's three things. Now, first of all, Brian Schottenheimer said we're not going to show anything in
Okay,
our
great.
scheme. We're going to be vanilla. However, Joe Milton, who's the backup quarterback, has got the majority of the reps. I want to see if Joe Milton can lead a couple of scoring drives. He's been a little up and down in camp. The run defense has been being nice here. It's been inconsistent doing live games. Jay Toa, 7th-round pick from UCLA, has played really well in camp. I want to see how he plays against another team. Nate Thomas has been a surprise left tackle starter with Tyler Guyton out for a couple of weeks with a fracture in his knee. So I want to see how Nate Thomas, who didn't play last year, who hasn't played in over 800 days because he hurt his knee coming out of college, didn't play at all last year. So his last game was like over 800 days ago. So he's going to start at left tackle. He'll get a lot of reps. So those are the three things that I want to see against the Rams.
All right. Last thing before we let you go, Calvin.
Mm-hmm.
For whom on this roster
Mm-hmm.
does preseason actually matter? Give me one player that needs to have a good preseason.
I would say Mozzie Smith. He's a 2023 first-round pick. He got hurt in practice the other day, but Mozzie has been this inconsistent player since day one when he got here, and now this is a scheme that's supposed to help him. He's lost weight, about 300 pounds, so we need to find out if he was worthy of the first-round pick. As of right now, I would say no.
All right, well that's good. I'm going to be watching Mozzie Smith when I do turn on the preseason game. Thank you, Calvin. I do want to say as we say goodbye to you that I owe you probably some kind of alcoholic beverage or a meal. I don't know how you deal with Jerry on a day in and day out basis. This is just silliness, but thanks for walking us through it. And I have August 29th circled for when I will pay attention to anything that Jerry says again.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Evan. Thanks for having me. See you guys.
Well, Shawn McFarland is here, my partner on the Rangers beat. We're going to talk a little bit about the Rangers now and do a deadline post-mortem. Post-mortem just makes it sound like the team is dead. That's probably not the right way, but we'll do a look back at the trade deadline, and we're going to talk about a couple of other issues. But Shawn, I just have to tell you the one thing that is stuck in my mind for the last week, and I've tweeted this a couple times. I've alluded to it other places, but in 29 years of covering this team, this is the weirdest team I have ever covered. They could make the playoffs. I have no feel one way or another whether or not they will. They were supposed to be a good offensive team. They are not. We had questions about the pitching staff. The pitching staff has been, by and large, great. They addressed things at the deadline that they were good at rather than the things that they were bad at. This team has been harder for me to figure out, and I ran into people in Seattle who were asking me the same question. I didn't have any answers. I know you haven't been around quite as long, but like, do you feel like this? You have any feel for who this team is? 112 games in?
No, not even a little bit. I mean, look at last night's game, the walk-off against the Yankees. It's like they fall down 3-0 against one of baseball's best lefties, and like 99.9% of the time, that's like a borderline guaranteed loss for this team, right? Just given they have had horrible times rallying and they have struggled mightily against left-handers. And then they go out and put up 4 runs on Max Fried, and they rally. They get these clutch hits from Joc Pederson, who we will talk about, and Josh Young, who's had his own troubles this season. And it's like that's a game that it's one of those games where they lose that 9 times out of 10. And because this team is incredibly unpredictable, and to your point, we cannot get a read on, they go and win that game after a really wacky and ugly and confusing road trip. Like
Yeah, and
I don't know how to make, I don't know what to make of that.
and it's a game that you would think, okay, well, this is going to jumpstart this team, but we've been through this game a dozen times already this year, and nothing really seems to jumpstart them for a long period of time. Um, I I'm just stuck on that. That has been the one thing that I haven't been able to get out of my head, is that this team just does not give you any feel one way or another, which must be, as difficult as it is for me to describe, it must be incredibly difficult for Bruce Bochy to try and manage. Um, so look, at the deadline, the Rangers added Merrill Kelly, they added Danny Coulomb, and they added um, Phil Maton. Three pitchers, a starter, and two relievers. What was your takeaway from the deadline, Sean?
I think the biggest thing is you can look at the lack of offensive additions, which was obviously, and look, like when you're a team in the Rangers position, like no fans are going to be happy with the deadline. They could have added all offense, and if Robert Garcia goes out and blows games this weekend, they're going to be saying, "Why didn't you add to the bullpen?" If what happened where the offense falls flat, they're going to say, "Why didn't you add to the offense?" But I think my biggest takeaway, and I think this has been true of the entire season, is as it pertains to the offense. Like, yeah, could a platoon bat have helped this team? Yeah, sure. Like every team could use another platoon bat, right? But if the core guys on this team do not, find their way to their career averages or exceed them, a platoon bat was not going to help them. Like it's not going to matter if you bring in a guy who can hit lefties if Adolis Garcia and Joc Pederson and Josh Young and all these guys are not where they need to be. And I think that was my biggest takeaway from the deadline, is that, like, look, they reinforce the strength, and that's great. And as it's always been, the future of this year's team will lie on the offensive players already here.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on a lot of fronts there. Sure, there was a platoon bat that they probably could have added. Maybe Tommy Pham was available. But I do think that you look at this team by and large, and they've already got the platoons that they're going to have in place, and they were going to count on Jake Berger to come back at some point in time, and yeah, Joc Pederson has been wholly underwhelming, but he's going to hit against right-handed pitching, and there's the other options, were guys like Rowdy Tellez. So I don't know that the Rangers could have significantly improved that more than betting on Joc Pederson to somewhere to not be 500 points below where his OPS against right-handers was last year. That the law of averages had to perk up a little bit, that he couldn't be this bad. I also think that it said something about this farm system at the deadline, that usually to get a position player, you're going to have to include a position player in the deal, and that's what Seattle did to acquire Eugenio Suarez, somebody the Rangers had at least scouted in the last couple of weeks, and for whom the market had kind of dwindled a little bit. And you look at the system, and we all know Sebastian Walcott, but then there was a dramatic drop off in terms of tier of talent. A lot of that is explainable in that you have promoted Jack Leiter, Kumar Rocker, Josh Young, Wyatt Langford, Evan Carter in the last 3 years. You've traded off a tier in deals with the Cardinals and the Mets and the Royals, and you've had a significant number of injuries to your top tier pitchers. So you really had a drop off. Where do you feel this minor league system ranks in terms of talent? I've got to feel like at this point it's bottom five in terms of talent right now.
Yeah, I think it is too, and I think it's going to depend on these recent draftees in the last few. As we look forward, we project forward, it's going to depend on the Malcolm Moores and the Dylan Drylings and the Gavin Fiends to determine whether this can be an average or an above average system from a position player standpoint. Now, I think as we've both written about and talked about, like they've done a good job of building a pretty deep pool of pitching prospects, from whether it's finding guys who drop because of injury concerns like Tommy John, or being able to turn a Cole Drake into a, you know, their fifth best prospect in the system. Like that is something I think they've been able to lean on, and I think the deadline was emblematic of that. But the lack of position player prospects that they could dangle in trades, to your point, they've dealt a lot of those guys, they promoted a lot of those guys, and I think it's going to be up to these last few drafts and obviously their international scouting and what they do on that end to kind of determine if this time next year or in 2027 it can be a viable system, whether it's for internal promotions or dealing guys at the deadline.
Yeah, I mean, look, and to your point, neither Malcolm Moore nor Dylan Dreiling were capable of fronting the package for a significant player. That seemed to be the general consensus. And so, you went from Walcott, you didn't have anybody else capable of fronting a package from the position player side. So they are thin there. And that I think is a huge part of why Gavin Fiend was going to be their first round pick, in that they were going to take a high school shortstop. I think the only other question was whether or not they might have considered a college shortstop, but they were going to take a middle infielder. And I will also say that, as down as the system is right now, Jose Corniel, pitcher, just came back and is pitching well. There is hope that Winston Santos and Emiliano Teodo will both be back and pitching before the end of this year. As we know, Alejandro Rosario is out for this year. He has not yet had Tommy John surgery due to other medical issues, and that he's probably going to miss next year as well. So there's a whole tier there, and we haven't even gotten into the guys who were real risers in the past year, like Paul Bonzagni and Isaac Tiger. These are all pitchers. If they all come back healthy, all of a sudden you make a big jump. It's all based on pitching, but you make a big jump in terms of both talent that's capitable for making trades next year, or potentially for helping your own staff. What do you think of the fact that the Rangers added to the bullpen but did not add a closer?
I think it's twofold. I think one, just guys put a pin on our last conversation, like they didn't have the assets to go after a guy like Yohan Duran, right?
Nor did they have the in-game presentation to
exactly. I mean,
put a tarantula on the screen.
When I went to Minnesota, I think 2 years ago, they gave out these Yohan Duran bobbleheads that like lit up and made noise and had fire. It was a beautiful, like one of the better bobbleheads I've ever seen, and that's part of the mystique of Duran, right? But did they have the assets to go out and get a top flight closer like a Duran? No. Bednar, maybe that's a different story. But I think also, I think adding some depth to the bullpen is never a bad thing. And I think like Coulombe and Maton, like those are high-end depth pieces that you can kind of flex in different high leverage roles. And I think as we get into discussing closer and whether Garcia is the guy and what that kind of looks like, I think just having more options will allow the Rangers to try out different things in these last 2 months. But look, if you wanted a high-end closer on this market, it's pretty clear that you had to pay a premium to get one. And it's just a matter of whether the Rangers either had those assets or were comfortable moving those assets to go and get one.
The Phillies traded 2 top 100 prospects to get Yohan Duran.
Yeah.
If the Rangers had wanted David Bednar, they were probably going to have to include a major league ready player, and they did not have that unless they were going to take somebody from their major league team. So those were both guys that they had interest in that just were out of their price range. I will say this: the fact that neither Coulomb nor Maton have overpowering stuff, I thought they needed a hard thrower. That said, these two guys have a significant amount of intestinal fortitude. I'd love to use other words to describe them, but this is a family podcast. Um, they've done a great job in the first week that they've been here. I will also say, look, the Rangers had a lot of interest in Jake Bird, who was traded to the Yankees, gave up the game winner to Josh Young last night, and then was immediately optioned to AAA. So, um, uh, I think this team doesn't get enough credit for identifying value in pitchers. They've done a great job on the free agent market with starters over the last few years. You look at the bullpen they have constructed this year, basically off of pennies. They've done a really good job there, and Garcia's pitched really well. I do think that the issue right now with Robert Garcia is it's hard enough to transition into a closer. That's a significant change. It's even harder when you're trying to be in a pennant race and play from behind. And know that the narrative of this season is there is no margin for error on the pitching side. The pitching side has got to be perfect. All of that said, I do think that, and Bruce Bochy alluded to this a little bit, even though he was asked on Friday night, he was asked on Saturday, he was asked on Sunday about uh, Robert Garcia in the bullpen in the closer role. And then apparently on the radio show on Monday, he kind of alluded to the fact that, yeah, maybe he'd like to find a soft landing spot for Garcia for a day or two. I think the additions of Coulomb and Maton make it easier to try and move pieces around. I don't know if I'd want to close a game with Maton or Coulomb. I don't know. There is hope that Chris Martin comes back, and I do think that you don't have, as you get into the stretch run, you don't have an identifiable absolute closer. How much of a concern for you is that?
It's concerning. I think at least to an extent. Now, look, in 2023, it was not that different, but I still don't know. For the life of me, I'll never be able to explain what happened in the fall of 2023 with this Rangers bullpen, and I don't expect them to be able to replicate that because it was pure insanity. But yeah, I think to your point, like there's a lot of like really interesting arms in that bullpen. I think Hobie Miller's been one of the best high leverage arms in baseball. Do I think he has like closer stuff? No. And I feel the same way about like Danny Coulomb or Phil Maton or Sean Armstrong. Like a lot of guys who I think can be used in pockets or flexed around or used for the 6th through 11th innings that have a lot of value. And I think my concern as we talk about, can we move one of these guys into a closer role? Like, do you want to disrupt what they've been good at so far, which is being able to pitch in pretty much any inning in any spot and give this bullpen success?
Yeah, and this is on the position player side. Let me just reference this on the position player side because, there has been a lot of grumbling about Joc Pederson and that Sam Haggerty has had great success against left-handed pitching. And so why isn't Sam Haggerty playing every day? And this is the same principle here. Sometimes a guy is doing something really well and you don't want to change his role, potentially change his swing when he moves to the other side of the plate. Impact his confidence, and then all of a sudden you've got a player who's not good just in a platoon. He's just not good, period. So
Yeah.
that is a factor with moving all these guys around. I think that the thing that still sticks out there is, look, there is some intrigue that if John Gray settles in the bullpen, and I thought last night was an important outing for him, that he could be that he could be an answer as a guy who could with that sweeping curveball, with that sweeping slider, and throwing 95 to 97, he could be a guy who could close out games. First couple games back, he really struggled with command. I know in one game in Seattle when he really struggled, he said he might have warmed up, or maybe this was Anaheim. He might have warmed up too long.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's still trying to get the cadence down a little bit for being a reliever. But he does like the role, and I think that's a huge element. What's your thought on John Gray's ultimate role with this team over the final 2 months?
I've said since that 23 run he had out of the bullpen that like he just makes sense as a reliever. And we talked to them last night after the game, and he acknowledged that like last night he warmed up. He didn't spend as much time warming up as he did in that Anaheim game. I asked him like, "Are you still shaking rust off?" And he sort of said like, "I feel good, but that first inning, like I go out there and it doesn't feel right." That might be part of the layoff he's gone through. It's transitioning to a new role. I would entertain the idea of John Gray as closer because I think with those pitches he has, he may immediately have the best stuff in the bullpen in terms of just like the best velocity, at least. And you think about having a closer that can blow stuff past guys. I think I would need to see him get a little more comfortable working out of the bullpen, warming up quick, coming into games quickly, coming in with men on, whatever the situation is, before I'm comfortable giving him the reins in the ninth. Because to your point, if they do that too early, it doesn't work. You risk upsetting the flow of things.
Yeah, and I think there's a very potential workable solution here. That since you don't have an outright closer, maybe you prepare John Gray and Robert Garcia as this goes on, and we're talking more about, probably the September run. You've got a left-hander in Garcia, and if you've got a pocket of lefties coming up, whether it's the 8th inning or the 9th inning, you deploy him, and then you use your other guy for the 9th inning. Or if it's, if you need to get some guys out and you need somebody with a hard throwing right-hander, maybe you deploy Gray in the 8th and you use Garcia in the 9th. So I do think that the fact that the Rangers have guys on both with that throw from different sides, that's attractive. And I do want to also say that if there's one, I don't know how to explain the 2023 playoff run, but I will say that if there is one guy that I want managing a bullpen in the postseason, it's Bruce Bochy. And when given the extra weapons that he can by moving a starter or so down and shortening up the bullpen in other ways, it's a real advantage. And I do think that we don't give Boch enough credit for how he managed the bullpen in 2023 in the postseason. I want to move on to one other thing before we let you go, and that is Joc Pederson. I last week on Twitter took enormous amounts of abuse about Joc Pederson. Not that I was writing his name in the lineup. I don't know if you're aware of this. I don't write the names in the lineup. Do you?
I've seen you pull a lineup card and write it out and give it a Boch, and Boch says, "Thank you, Evan. I appreciate your input." I know he always does, so that's actually shocking for me to hear.
Yeah, he appreciates my input, and then he drops it right into a wastebasket. But look, what's your thought on the continued use of Joc Pederson here?
I think it's complicated, but I have several thoughts. I think my overarching view of Joc right now is I am willing to trust a decade worth of data that says he's an above average hitter over 3 really bad months. And I will not, those are bad months. And it's still been bad aside from a
And
few
they're not
moments.
3 successive months either. They're 3 months separated
Yes.
by two plus months on the IL, which is significant. I mean, you really could throw away the first April
Yeah.
and May at this point in time and just take what he's done since he's come back from the IL.
Yeah. Yeah. So I recognize that. And some of the nastiest emails I've gotten this season have been in regards to me just saying if Joc Pederson is average, it's good for this team. People are very out on Joc Pederson. I understand that. But I'm willing to bet on the decade worth of data that says he can be at least an average hitter for his standards. Secondly, I don't know what the better options are. Yeah, sure, you can ride some. Like when he came back and they optioned Michael Hellman, people were like rioting the streets that Michael Hellman's better than Joc Pederson. Like, I think Hellman was interesting. I think he had a few good games. I don't know, there's some like fifth outfielder role for Michael Hellman, sure.
I mean, if people wanted to make an argument that they could have kept Michael Hellman over Ezekiel Duran, I wouldn't have
Sure.
argued with them on that.
Yeah. But, it just comes back to, like, I would rather just roll with Joc and hope that moments like last night turn the tide versus trying out guys that we're almost certain will not have significantly more success.
Right. And this is what people, and I tried to allude to this last night with a tweet, or Monday night with a tweet that basically said, look, it's easy to knee jerk. A guy goes through a slump or a month or 3 months or maybe even a bad season, and it's easy to knee jerk and say, get him out. But he's on the roster. You have a commitment to him. I don't see this team pulling the plug on him less than halfway into that contract. And there is a belief in a track record to fall back on. And we're not talking about ancient history. We're talking about a guy who had a 960 OPS against right-handed pitching last year. So, yeah, there's a reason to trust that. And, if you told me that your best prospect was ready to come up and he was a left-handed hitter and he could crush right-handers, that's a different story. But your other options are Rowdy Tellez right now.
Yeah.
Or using one of the two catchers, and maybe they will use a catcher more often. But then you get into this whole idea that you were trying to split playing time between Jonah Heim and Kyle Higashioka pretty easily to maximize their effort or maximize their abilities, rather than having one of them overworked like we saw from Heim the last year plus. So I don't know if Monday night's home run starts anything for Joc. And look, I think the narrative gets also a little bit confused in the fact that Joc doesn't look the part. He looks a little bit out of shape. He looks a little bit frumpy at the plate. And so that only adds to people's angst. But the bottom line is he's an accomplished hitter. He's here for a specific role. And the Rangers are going to continue to try to let him find that. Now, I think if we get to September and he hasn't shown significant improvement in August, this team may have to look at whatever options they have available to them. And it still may be that Joc is the best option. But I don't think you've gotten to a point here yet where you can say this has failed. It certainly doesn't look good, but I think this is also one of the things that you count on Bruce Bochy for, is to be more patient than a fan. And I think that is what he's showing. And I think that, listen, Monday night for both Joc Pederson and Josh Young, as you wrote, could be a huge night. I think that Josh Young has the energy quotient that this team could thrive off of, but he needed some success and he needed to contribute to a big win. And so to do that, and we saw the body language last night, and I do think that that's going to imbue him with more confidence after he was licking his wounds from the minor league assignment and all of that. And Joc can be an emotional player too. So I think all of that is a good development for the Rangers. They've got still Philadelphia coming in on this homestand. And then they go to Toronto on the next road trip. So the Rangers are by no stretch out of the woods, but I do think, look, even with that awful road trip, which would have not looked that bad had they won the Sunday game, this team's not out of it by any stretch, and it just goes back to where we started, Sean. This is the weirdest team I have ever been around.
Yeah, I mean, look, to bring it full circle with Joc and Josh, and like last night, on paper, theoretically, is one of those games that you think, oh, this can jumpstart Joc, this can boost Josh Young. And yes, everything about last night suggests this game can boost this team. But how many times have we seen games or stretches that we say, this is where it turns around, and then it just somehow gets worse? Right. And it's unpredictable. And as much as I want to believe last night was some turning point, I have a season's worth of data to say that it just might not be, because I cannot get a hold of this team.
Yeah, I mean, the data suggests that this team is what it is, but all it needs is to get hot for 2 weeks to make a change. Anyway, that's going to do it here. Sean, thank you for jumping on this morning. It's great that we set a record with number of Sports Day staffer guests. There will be a little bit more added to your typical Sports Day Insider bonus pay for this. So I appreciate that. And I know nobody out there missed Kevin, but you can send him emails at ksherrington@dallasnews.com telling him to remain on vacation if you would like. Or just write to me and tell me to shut the heck up. So anyway, for all of us out there, or all of us in here, to all of you out there, thanks for joining us, everybody.